So it was this huge hope somehow, maybe then a change is coming super fast.
Even when we had these huge strikes with hundreds of thousands of people in different cities, the politics didn't change.
What are you going to do if they don't respond?
Maybe one thing that is necessary to stress more inside Fridays for Future is that we cannot ask for climate action to global leaders and without prioritizing like indigenous rights, because what I have seen is that many activists like ask for leaders that take this climate action and that do this energy transition, but what they don't often see is that this energy transition that is being developed right now through this green capitalism is costing the lives of some people in global south.
So with us today is Iván Daniel Martinez. He is a climate activist from Mexico in many different roles. And we're super excited to talk about the development of the climate strike movement from his perspective and also strategic debates. Before we start, my name is Elias, and the interview that you're listening to is part of a whole series of interviews I conducted for a research project at Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies. In these interviews, I ask many amazing activists and researchers from different communities what it means for them to strike for climate justice and to share their thoughts on the future of the movement. I learned so much from these conversations, and I hope that they can be valuable to you too. So for this video, unfortunately, we had some problems with the video quality. So instead of Ivan's face, you'll actually be seeing pictures of activists and earth defenders. But now, without further ado, here's the episode.
Well, my name is Iván Daniel Martinez. I am from Mexico City, and I am from a youth-led organization focused on climate justice from Latin America, from a Latin American perspective called Legado Gaia. And I also collaborate like in some other organizations like the Indigenous Futures Network or Fridays for Future MAPA. And I would say that I started like being a climate activist during the COVID-19 pandemic, because I started working in more institutional initiatives related to, for example, changing the Mexican climate change law towards like human rights and intercultural based initiative, and also co-organizing the local conference of youth, which is like the local or national version of the COP in the different countries. And what I started doing is to put into debate like what for some people could be disruptive perspective for these spaces, like the importance of interculturality, like the rights of nature, the importance of taking into account global south alternatives to development as part of the climate debate, considering that many aspects of climate change are caused because of the white supremacy, colonialism, capitalism, and all these systems of oppression. And I started like organizing co-organizing like strikes and everything, I would say, yeah, during this year, 2022. Before that time, I just attended like strikes, but I wasn't really involved in its organization.
Right, thank you for sharing. And I'm wondering, was there any particular moment or, you know, situation, factors that made you want to like, you know, put your energy into this movement and not others?
Yeah, I would say maybe like that it was like a very privileged moment because in 2021 I was selected as one of the Mexican delegates at an event in Milan called Youth for Climate, which is like a pre-COP. And I co-organized alongside the Indigenous Futures Network and Fridays for Future an action to stress on the importance of the environmental defenders, especially from the global south, who have been murdered and unfortunately who are being criminalized due to their protection of the earth. And during that time, I think that was like my transition from the more institutional side of the climate action to the activism, because I had the opportunity to participate in different actions alongside Fridays for Future activists, and all. I also got to know the grassroots movement in Milan, and I was like really surprised of the local organization and how an organization like Fridays for Future that I had in mind that was more, I don't know how to say it, that wasn't like, I thought that it wasn't connected to the local struggles, you know, the anti-capitalist struggles, anti-colonial struggles, etc., etc. But what I saw in Milan, at least, is that there's like a grassroots movement that is actually connected to Fridays for Future. And that's what I liked a lot about that experience, and that they supported me in well, they supported us in the creation of this action, in which we took the scenery and we put an audio of indigenous land defenders from Mexico and Guatemala, where they stressed like the situation they are confronting of ecocide, genocide, etc., etc. And also, I had the opportunity of giving a speech at the climate strike from Milan, and well, that was like something really amazing. And yeah, after that, during all the 2021, uh, we through Legaya, my collective, and another one in which I also participate that I forgot to mention, which is División Juvenil y Cambio Climático, Climate Change Division. We connected with Indigenous Futures Network, which is like a network that integrates a lot of indigenous resistances from Mexico and also from Guatemala, in order to help them to attend COP26 Glasgow and to amplify their demands in the framework of climate crisis. And this network is focused on what they call culture hacking. They hack like the narratives, the dominant narratives, and they put life at the center, as they say, and the importance of indigenous peoples as living solutions to the climate crisis. So I also had the opportunity of supporting like this delegation and getting to know like all these amazing like indigenous defenders and getting to know about their struggles. And that was something that changed me completely.
Right.
And when I came back to Mexico, I decided to yeah, to keep participating in some institutional initiatives, but mostly focusing on grassroots organizations and in local organization, in organizing in the city, organizing in my in my borough, and also getting to support as much as I could, like the territorial processes of indigenous defenders. That's what I would say that changed me, that experience. Sorry if it was very long.
No, thank you for sharing. And I'm curious, you mentioned already that, you perhaps the perception in the beginning was that Fridays for Future or the climate strike movement is sort of a very northern, city-based movement with, certain kind of demographic. And I noticed during my interviews that, for a lot of people in global north countries, the biggest mobilizations, of course, or the biggest moments happened in 2019. But of course, for other countries, the most significant changes perhaps happened during COVID with the emergence of Fridays for Future, MAPA, and so on. So I'm wondering if you agree with this, and if you could tell us a little bit more about how the movement developed since 2020, and how it has developed throughout the pandemic.
Yeah, sure. Well, I only know like Friday's MAPA from 2021 when I started getting to know like the initiatives that many people from Global South organize. And I really liked the fact that a bunch of people from the Global South decided to create like a parallel group to the Fridays for Future International to stress on the realities of Global South, because is, as many people have already said, like Global South is in the front line. So, well, not all Global South, because there are like also differences here in the Global South. So, for example, I cannot say that I am from the most affected people in the Global South. I am from the middle class, but yet still, like the realities are very different than what people in the cities from Global North live. And I I would say that from my side, what I have seen is that like the importance of the territorial defenders, of land defenders, of environmental defenders is something that has been highlighted and stressed during like at least this year, and I am glad that that has happened. And I would say that part of that is due to the work of networks like Indigenous Futures and a lot of indigenous groups that have been pushing for changing like what before was a very whitewashed movement, and stressing like that there is no climate action without like the indigenous peoples and without considering like the perspectives of the people who are in the front lines, who are like putting their lives, putting their bodies at risk to defend like the earth, to defend like everything. And I would say that maybe one thing that is necessary to stress more inside Fridays for Future is that we cannot ask for climate action to global leaders and without prioritizing like indigenous rights, because what I have seen is that many activists like ask for leaders that take this climate action and that do this energy transition, but what they don't often see is that this energy transition that is being developed right now through this green capitalism is costing the lives of some people in global south, because here you have, for example, energy projects or mega projects of renewable energy that displace indigenous communities, or you have like projects like Red Plus that are being negotiated at COP, or these false solutions that violate human rights of land defenders, of indigenous peoples. And I would say that that's something that many climate activists have to take into account, because we cannot have like this climate action at the expense of the literally of the lives of the ones who are putting their lives to save the planet.
Right. Thank you for sharing. And I'm wondering then how, these discursive changes, or also, I mean, programmatic changes towards more a program that really emphasizes climate justice over like just reducing carbon emissions, how that also affects the praxis of the movement. So do you think, for instance, I'm very curious about the term of the climate strike, because a lot of different movements use the term strike, like the labor movement also uses the term strike. The feminist movement also, uses the term strike. So is that something that you debate in Mexico and in MAPA, or do you think, this is a form of action that currently is not very helpful and that the movement should use other kind of tactics?
Well, I have seen like discussions that climate strike act not really like strikes, because this term has been used, as you said, by the proletarian movement, for example, um, to move for change to assure their labor rights. And I don't know, I think that climate strikes must keep going, but they must not be like the only tactic to demand climate justice. And I would say that I don't know if unfortunately, but climate strikes have been like instrumentalized by a lot of mainstream media as, I don't know, like a commercial product,
Mm.
and that they don't really express like the emancipatory demands that are behind many climate strikes. For example, the anti-capitalist demands, anti-colonial demands, etc., etc. And they just stress the fact that they are like young people demanding global leaders to take like actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But it's not just that we are demanding. For example, the last strike that was, I think, 2 weeks ago, in Legaya, Indigenous Futures Network, and we co-organized like an action here in Mexico City. Like, yes, we strike, but like focusing on the fact that there's no climate justice without justice for the peoples, for especially for indigenous people, and that we should consider and support, and that all the climate movements should support like the territorial processes of many people that are putting their lives at risk in front of mega projects, in front of companies, in front of many projects that just benefit a few people. And for example, in the case of the strikes that I have co-organized, which is that, and also the last one before that, like any mainstream media or like really covered like the strike, like, or the demands that we were saying, like what we say in Spanish, consignas, that were a lot of justice for environmental defenders who have been murdered, but also to stop mega projects that are being developed by the current Mexican government. And it's different, the coverage that we received than the coverage that the climate strike received before in Mexico, when the movement was just focused on like a narrative based on please just recycle, or like on doing like these individual actions that I do not say that they are not important. But yeah, I would say that unfortunately, I don't think that currently climate strikes are functioning to a lot to really position like these issues. I mean, they are, but they are working to include like the climate activists that were before like replicating like this narrative, this individualist narrative. Now they replicate like another kind of narratives, more related to the realities of global south, of people, and etc. But I would say that we need like some other tactics also to call on, I mean, so that in general the people start realizing of the climate emergency and of the climate justice and the intersection of that and different systems of oppression.
Right. Thank you. And I'd be very curious to, if you mentioned that we need other tactics, what are the debates currently, for instance, in Mexico? How are people, thinking about in the next few months or even the next few years? What are kind of projects that you think would be would make sense to do?
So yeah, I would say that civil disobedience is a very useful tactic to call on attention of global leaders, but not just global leaders. I don't even know right now if that's just our only audience, because before, like, the climate movement was just like completely focused on calling on the attention of the decision makers, of the politicians. But right now, I think that we should focus more on calling on the attention of the people, because we have seen like that the global leaders have not really taken into account what we had to say. And as Greta Thunberg has already said in some of her speeches, like, they are just saying blah blah blah, and the hope is not really into these big conferences. It's in the people, and it's especially in the people who are fighting for defending their territories, and through that for defending like the earth. And I also think that the hope is on changing, like, yeah, this extractive system we live in. And I also think that we should start doing like combating like the catastrophism, the climate catastrophism, that is a form of the system to paralyze all kind of action, or kind of climate action from the people. And that we also can take climate action in our context. For example, in our case, in Legaya, we did a project called Sowing Climate Hope. And what we did is some sort of climate brigade in in my borough, in my neighborhood, and we, through a urban garden that is here, we did like a series of talks about like the climate emergency, but also the importance of sowing climate hope, and how the hope is not on the global leaders, it's not on what the decisions they are taking, but on what we can do in our context, on changing like the local economic practices, like implementing urban gardens, implementing communitarian processes, implementing like this social environmental transition. And I would say that that is a form of combating climate catastrophism, of sowing climate hope, and not only just keep waiting that the leaders will take action, because that will cost us a lot, literally.
Right.
And yeah.
Thank you. So I guess standing in solidarity with land defenders, occupying universities, civil disobedience, and sowing climate hope. That's a lot of different approaches. I think super interesting. Yeah, I think that would be a good way to end, actually. Thank you so much, Iván, for taking the time. And, you know, if there's anything else you want to say, this is the chance, I guess.
No, thank you so much for doing this. And yeah, I would say just that there's no climate movement or climate action without hearing like the voices of the people who have been at the front lines from even before the climate movement was created. No, and that the climate crisis, as many climate activists have already said, it's not just like the greenhouse gas emissions, but it's capitalism, it's colonialism, it's patriarchy, and it's a lot of oppression systems that are interrelated, that now have evolved in this climate crisis that affects not only human lives, but all life in the planet. No? And that if we really want to tackle climate crisis, we need to tackle like its root causes and this oppression system that have caused it. And we must demand action from global north. Also, well, not demand action from global north, demand reparation from global north, but also from global south governments to indigenous people. And as Andrea Ishu from Indigenous Futures Network says, like indigenous people are living solutions to the climate crisis. Environmental defenders are living solutions to the climate crisis. And I would say that some of the best climate action is to stop like extractivism and to stop the I don't know how to say in English, exterminio that they are facing.
Yeah.
Extermination that they are facing to continue that system in which we live in. I would only say that.
Thank you so much. You. And thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Feel free to check out the other episodes as well. And I hope you have a great day wherever you are.